Hello, and thanks for joining today to this webinar where I'm going to talk about how to orchestrate promotion waves and maximize reach without being spammy. And without being spammy is really important here, right? Because in general, we want to be respectful to our audience, but especially with a developer audience and a technical audience, being spammy can backfire extremely quickly. And spamming people is a surefire way to damage your brand and reputation. And once the trust is lost, it's extremely, extremely hard to earn it back, right? Brand is every touch point somebody has with your company, and spamming is one of the most egregious things you can do to destroy reputation. So just a super quick background about me. Who am I? I'm the co-owner at Draft, and I also co-founded a tech startup in 2012, scaled it to a few millions in annual recurring revenue, and then sold it in 2018. And by that time, our content marketing program achieved for us that we had around 1 million unique readers to our blog per year. It generated about 1,500 marketing leads per month. And today I'm going to use the content programs and the distribution playbooks of that company as an example. So I'm actually going to walk you through how we did things specifically. And I'm going to show you the ins and outs of how we set this up, all with a marketing team of, at its highest point, 4 people. So just a quick look at the agenda. So if you followed my previous webinars, if not, you can check out the recordings on our Draft.dev YouTube channel. But you know by now how to set up a content engine in the age of AI, and you know, hopefully, how to consistently create and publish good content. But just because the content is published doesn't mean the job is done, especially in the age of AI, right? Where we know like AI overviews are biting quite significantly into our search traffic. It's really important to proactively also distribute and promote our content. So just because the blog post or the ebook is live doesn't mean the work is done. Far from it. And next, I'm going to talk about optimizing for reach. So when we think about distribution, really the one thing that matters the most is reach. And I'll talk through a few important things here, like tapping into what I call multiplicators. I'm going to talk about different content types and channels they fit in, and cadence and timing, not interfering with, for example, what your sales organization does and thus spamming your audience, stuff like that. Then, as mentioned, I'm also going to briefly talk about aligning with your sales organization's activities. This is really important. Distribution and promotion means pushing information to your audience. And again, if, I don't know, you send a newsletter promoting a new ebook, but on the same day, a sales rep that's eager to have a connection with a potential prospect sends the same email with the same ebook, that's just like, what's going on here from the view of the prospect, right? So again, this can be quite detrimental to your brand. And then this will be the main chunk of this webinar. I'll walk through some real life examples of my company, Codeship, and the content program and distribution engine I set up there. And by the end, when the company got acquired, that engine had created about 85,000 ebook leads and over 15,000 webinar registrations. And as mentioned, we had over 1 million unique readers on our blog per year. And lastly, I'm going to jump into a Q&A session. And I just want to mention to you, you might have seen already a little bit in the chat, we've got Robin from the team, and he will, during the presentation, send some messages in the chat with helpful material that's relevant to what I'm talking about. But also don't be, if this is stressing you out, don't, because as mentioned, we're going to send a recording of this session tomorrow via email. And in that email, we will also provide the links to all of the material that Robin is sending in the chat panel here. So if you want to check out some stuff, by all means do it, but also don't be stressed or rushed by it. So before we dive in, just one thing I want to mention. When I talk about content in this webinar, I'm talking about text-based content, right? So something that's published on a blog or as an ebook that's a downloadable. I'm not talking about video content strategy or, audio podcast content. So just keep that in mind when I say we publish content, it's usually text-based content. Okay, let's jump in. First part. As mentioned, distributing your content proactively is very important. You cannot simply rely on being picked up by search engines, especially in the era of AI. So that's why you want to be proactive. And sure, right, if you followed my previous webinars, we talked about, keyword research and content clusters and semantic clustering and stuff like that. So there's a good chance you get picked up by search engines, but we don't want to solely rely on this, right? So we want to proactively promote what we publish, and it's all about reach. That is the number one priority. Yes, there might be there might be an audience that you reach that is not the highest lead quality. I don't know, right? You're an enterprise SaaS product and you get, single person Gmail accounts or something like that and reach these kinds of people. That's fine at the beginning because it will take you quite a while to figure out the right channels, the right cadence, the right types of content to push into which channel. So for now, just think about you want to get reach, cast the widest net possible, and reaching the widest net possible with the content that you have published. And so there's different ways people can discover our content. One is finding it actively. So SEO and GEO, so ChatGPT, Claude, Perplexity, all of the stuff like that, right? And today we're going to talk about the second part here. So they're browsing and they're receiving information push fast. So they're just checking out the social media or the newsletters that they're subscribed to, or they're browsing a site and they're seeing some ads. This is what we're going to talk about here. And we're going to talk about how to get in front of our audience's eyes when they browse for information and how we can orchestrate this multi-channel, different kind of cadences that we create these waves where somebody sees us in 1 week on that channel and the next week on another channel, and it's all fresh, different content, and we're just on top of them without being overbearing and spammy. So yeah, just drilling that one more time here. Our highest priority is reach. So how can we optimize for reach? So we'll definitely want to tap into multiplicators. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about this at a later point, but these are basically places that work on growing their audience while we just work on our things, right? So I don't know, you might be an identity solution, your team, your engineers, your marketing team is working on gaining like attracting awareness around your identity solution, but at the same time, you have like a tech newsletter that is, building up their subscriber base. And we want to tap into that subscriber base that the tech newsletter is building up over time, but we just focus on our things. And then when the timing is right, we just tap into that audience that's ready-made for us. We also want to focus on cadence and timing. And again, it's like, if you've seen some other webinars, I'm big into, this is not gung-ho, this is very structured. We use data. For example, we can look into our whole audience like that we have in our CRM. What's the majority of people are in which time zone, and then we optimize our promotions for people that reside in that kind of time zone, and we make sure we adhere to a okay frequency in a specific channel. So I don't know, might be more welcome on Twitter to push more often than it is on LinkedIn or than it is in Slack communities, right? So we want to adhere to that, and we want to be smart around that. And as mentioned, we also don't want to interfere with what our sales organization does, right? So we can look into data, and the data helps inform how we approach these things. And then, of course, we can focus on our own individual reach. So if you're in a company that has lots of individuals, that can create quite a bit of reach, right? And we can systematically use our own team to promote our content. But also keep in mind, I'm going to talk about this, right? Everybody has their own personal level of comfort to promote stuff of their employers, right? And then lastly, I just want to also say, when you think about different channels, you want to make sure that it's not like you have one channel for one specific purpose. Again, you want to get biggest bang for your buck, cast a wide net. So try to find channels where, you can use the channel to promote a feature launch, but also a new blog post or a new downloadable, right? And again, I'm going to walk through a real life example, and I assume a lot of it will apply to you because my company had a technical audience, was a SaaS startup that had a bottoms up approach. So we wanted to attract and gain respect from software developers, and they would get us into the organization and advocate us upwards. I assume we have people in the audience here where that is the case as well, but also top-down approach also works with the stuff I'm talking about here. So let's talk about multiplicators. So as mentioned, those are channels that grow their audience for us while we work on our thing, basically, right? And why are they doing this? So they want to sell sponsorship slots, right? And let's take the example of tech newsletters, right? We can use these channels to tap into a ready-made engaged audience that fits well for what we want to message. And of course, right, the more subscribers they get, the more eyes the site providers get on ad placements, which means the ads can be sold for a higher amount. So these tech newsletters or influencers, whatever you want, podcasts, right, they are working on increasing their subscriber base so that they can sell their sponsorship slots more expensively. But we can also try to build meaningful relationships with the owners and curators or with these influencers, and then try to get some free organic placements with a little nudge from our end where it makes sense, where it is not, I don't know, fishy or weird, but really when we feel like, hey, we have a perfect content piece that fits so perfectly with your audience, you might be interested in featuring it in your newsletter, right? And so this is a very, very powerful channel utilizing multiplicators. And so here are some examples of multiplicators, right? As mentioned, this can be newsletters, this can be podcasts, influencers, can also be like LinkedIn groups and stuff like that, right? So you can read the list here. You can think about what applies to you, but I'm pretty sure most of this stuff here, I still have Facebook groups in here as well. Hey, it might work for some. When we talk about the real life example at Codeship, there were some, to me, very peculiar things in the data. And back then, Facebook worked really well for us, which I never understood why, but it did. So you might want to try it too. Okay, let's talk about cadence and timing. So just like when I talked in the previous webinar about building a content engine and, you're getting ready to build up your content buffer. So you have, let's say, you have 6 blog posts ready. You want to spread them over time. You don't want to, publish the 6 blog posts in one day and then for 2 months had nothing, basically, right? It's the same thing with our promotion. We don't want to waste 100% of our fuel on day one. And it's really important to orchestrate these promotion waves, certain timings on certain days in different channels, right? And so this is where a content calendar comes in super handy. And if you watch some of my previous webinars, I keep on raving about the content calendar. It's like such a simple tool, and everybody's like, how can this be, why is this so helpful? Well, you will see later when I walk through the real life examples. But really, it's like, when I talk about promotion waves, what do I mean? So let's say, in week 1, we promote ebook number 1. And then in week 2, we promote another thing, but we also reference in a message ebook 1 from last week. Hey, if you missed it last week, ebook 1, right? And in the 3rd week, we have one last reference to ebook 1, but we're already promoting the next thing, ebook 2, for example. So, right, you have these things that rotate in and out, and we're creating in a very structured, you know, um, on purpose way how we promote these things and get our audience to see these things at certain times. And so, as mentioned, we want to attack multiple channels. That's really important. And so let's quickly talk about individual reach. As mentioned, we can use our social media accounts or Reddit accounts, or you might have some engineers that have a Hacker News account. We can share our content there. And the larger our company gets, the more people we have at our disposal. But as mentioned, this is really important, right? I talk a lot about we want to be respectful with our audience. It's not just our audience, of course, we want to be respectful with our own internal team. So if you have, really great technical content pieces, maybe Draft.dev created them for you and you want to distribute them and promote them, right? And suddenly you feel like, the engineers in your company are not really eager to do that. Everybody has their own level of comfort, right? That has to be respected. If they don't want to share it, if they don't want to promote something from their employer, that is fine, right? We have to live with that, right? As marketers, all we can do is tell them, hey, I know, here's a quick click to tweet link or a LinkedIn share link. The message is pre-written, but if you don't feel comfortable doing this or if you don't want to do it, fair game, no problem whatsoever, right? But we can send an email to specific groups in our company or in different Slack channels where we feel like people might want to promote this. And again, the more you people have in the company, obviously, right, these things add up. Okay, then just quickly talking about this. I don't want to right now spend too much time on this, but it's really important to emphasize that you have to align with your sales organization if you have a sales organization, because some sales organizations are very it's a numbers game. So there's a lot of sales organizations that are totally fine with sending a lot of messages, and it might be a little detrimental to the relationship, but really there's enough people in the world, and if we just send enough messages, right, it's gonna work out, right? I've seen cases where, I don't know, there's 8 emails in the first 5 days from a sales organization, right? That exists, and it exists because in some cases it works. But as mentioned, brand is every touch point somebody has with your company. There's a great talk by Bill Makaides around this. Robin might share it in the chat. So that's, it's your logo, it's your ads, it's your customer support, it's all interactions somebody has with you. And if you're being perceived as spammy, you're losing trust. And especially with a developer audience, that is tough, really, really tough to earn back, right? And so marketing can help coordinate the flushing people into the sales inbox by sending newsletters or email blasts around certain specific events like webinars and stuff like that. But we really have to sync with our sales organization around that. And again, a content calendar can be great help with that, because everybody can see in the organization what marketing is doing, what they're planning, what's happening when. And so here's just a quick example what I mean by flushing leads into the sales inbox. We might have an ebook at the beginning of the month, we send an email out, and then an ebook at the middle of the month, and then a webinar at the end of the month. Of course, sales reps also want to have those interactions with their potential prospects, right? And so we really need to make sure we sync with them. More just in a little bit when I talk through the real life example, and then I'm gonna dig a little deeper into this. So I've been talking about this real life example, so let's jump in, right? Let's get into it. I'm actually gonna show you. My company was Codeship, and it got acquired in 2018, so that's like 7 years ago. But this stuff is still relevant. The same processes and playbooks can still be applied. We're doing it as we speak with clients. We're seeing success. So don't let the 2018 number, fool you. So just a quick background. So these were the content programs that I ran at Codeship. So we had a blog that was mainly, awareness, community building. And as mentioned, we had around 80, 90,000 unique readers per month on the blog, which was based on the content engine that we built. And so we used the blog traffic to cookie people for retargeting audiences. I talked about this in a previous webinar. And also, obviously, to get people to sign up for the newsletter. There was a call to action in the blog post to sign up for the newsletter, right? And most of the stuff was top of the funnel, middle of the funnel content, awareness generation, just get people into our universe, basically. And then we had an ebook content engine. So that was gated material. So that was behind forms, and people had to provide us some information. For example, what's a job role or how many engineers work in your company. And we use those to generate sales prospects, right? And the questions on the forms would ask qualifying questions that helped us automatically push people either into the sales funnel or keep them in the marketing funnel to nurture them going forward. And those were also mainly top of the funnel, middle of the funnel content, but sometimes bottom of the funnel content. Let me just get some water here quickly. And then we also had a webinar engine. So that also was gated behind a form, a registration. And there we also generated sales prospects, and we mainly had middle of the funnel and bottom of the funnel content. So how to do stuff with our solution, for example, right? And we could do all of this because we had a really well-oiled machine. Like, we had a content engine running with a very, very small team, and had 120,000 newsletter subscribers when the company got acquired. And as mentioned, there's like 80, 90,000 people coming onto the blog. A subset of these people will subscribe to the newsletter or directly download an ebook from a call to action, right? At this point, we know first name, last name, and email. And then on our gated assets, we're just using progressive profiling to ask different questions to make sure, is this a good sales lead or not? And hey, this all can be achieved. You see the team size numbers here. This can be achieved with a small marketing team. It's all about discipline and good processes. Right? At this point, I didn't even use AI to help me, generate different kind of landing page copy or something like that. It's like, if you have a good process and if you're disciplined and you have a good look at your content calendar and you spec out the upcoming months, this works. This can work really well. And yes, I keep on talking about these content calendars, and I've been talking about content calendars in my 2 previous webinars. So I figured the other day, I just created some templates, and they're available now on our resources page, so Draft.dev/resources. And Robin will also link to them. But also, if you just want to get the direct link to those, we'll have a survey after the webinar, like post-webinar survey, where we ask for feedback. And if you just write in there, hey, I would like the Trello content calendar template, then Robin will just send you the direct link to it, right? Because for us, obviously, it's also a lead generation device, so we have landing pages for it, and there's a form. But you already filled out a form for the webinar, so why would we make you fill out another form? So, if you ask in the post-webinar survey for the direct links, Robin can just send them to you. But yeah, as mentioned, use content calendars. They're one of the most important marketing tools. It enables you to be proactive instead of reactive. Everybody has visibility. And when I now walk through these real-life examples of how I use this with my team at Codeship, you will see the power of it. And yeah, so here's a content calendar that doesn't look special. It's just for our blog posts that we publish. And you can see we published around 4 or 3 blog posts per week because we had a well-running content engine, and we had this, in February, I could tell you what gets published in April. We had around 2 months of buffer for our blog post publishing. And funnily enough, I have to mention this because I saw him as an attendee. Here on Tuesday the 11th, you can see a blog post by Matthew Setter, and I've seen that Matt is attending today, which is funny because later I talk about building relationships with important people, and it's really great to see you here, Matt, after all of these years. That was a really nice thing to see when I looked at the registrants list earlier today. But anyways, so what can you see on the screen? So here we see when we published ebooks and when we sent newsletters and when we had external sponsorships booked, and you can also see podcast sponsorships. And don't worry, I'm gonna walk through this in more detail where you see the stuff better on the screen. But one thing you might realize is there's a lot going on, and if you see the orange and green things, so the stuff that I have also boxed in here. Yes, we published 2 newsletter issues per week. Now that sounds crazy, but especially when I talk about not being spammy, right? But as mentioned, we had like over 100,000 newsletter subscribers, and I surveyed them. I just asked them, how often do you want to hear from us? And because we respected the audience and the content that we produced was genuinely helpful, they were okay with it. They told me, like, there was a time when I sent once a month, and then I made it to once a week because, as mentioned, we published 4 blog posts per week, 2 ebooks per month, 1 webinar per month. There was so much to send to people should they be interested in. And in my service, they told me, yeah, twice per week is okay for them. So, happy days for marketers when your audience allows you to reach out more often, right? It's all because we published high quality content and we were respectful with the audience, right? We didn't just push it. We asked them and served them. So I'm still quite proud of that, to be honest with you, because so that's unseen and unheard of, right? That you're allowed to send 2 emails into your inbox. But yeah, that was really cool. So now back to this chart here, or this graph that I showed you when I talked about how you can create these like promotions for your sales reps to push leads into an inbox. So as mentioned, at this point, the blog gets in around 80, 90,000 readers per month, and a subset of these people subscribe to the newsletter. So in this case, we know first name, last name, and email, right? And now at the beginning of the month, right? So the sales team, at the beginning of the month, they want to have conversations. They want to talk with leads. So at the beginning of the month, we publish a top funnel, high level ebook, and that gets a bunch of downloads because it's more high in the funnel, right? We're not talking about anything super specific, like in a webinar, for example, or even related to our product. It's like high level. I don't want to call it generic, but a high level topic. And that, of course, somebody that initially came in via your blog and is a newsletter subscriber, they might be quite high level still, because what we have on the blog is mostly top funnel and middle of the funnel. So if we have a top funnel ebook that fits well with something that they read on the blog, they might download it. And so suddenly we don't just have first name, last name, email, we have more information. And that would flush in a lot of new leads for the sales team. At the same time, keep in mind, we also, at the beginning of the month, had paid ads running, and we had sponsorships running and other initiatives. But the important thing here is that because this is a top funnel asset at the beginning of the month, a lot of these leads were not super high quality in terms of, oh my God, I can get them to a demo request or a sales call immediately, because top funnel means intent gap is quite wide. Intent gap in terms of they are ready to try your product and dive in, right? And so in the middle of the month, we would promote another ebook, a second ebook, and that was more middle of the funnel, because by that time the sales team had like 10 days, 2 weeks time to try to get a connection with the leads from the first promotion wave, right? And so hopefully they have heard from somebody, but if not, now there's a second ebook that is further down the funnel, where we talk more about our problem space, even mention our product potentially, right? And so because it's middle of the funnel, the intent gap is smaller. It's still there's an intent gap, right? But it's smaller. So the leads that come in here are fewer leads, because again, we talk more about the actual problem and potentially mention our product. So it's not as widely interesting to people as the more generic one at the beginning of the month. But the people that come in might want to, within the next week, jump on a sales conversation, right? So still within this month. Great. And then at the end of the month, we would host the very bottom of the funnel webinar, how to do XYZ with your product, right? I know I've seen we have somebody from proof.com here today. So this would just be like how to do XYZ exactly with Proof, right? And so because this is how to do XYZ with your product, the attendees to this webinar are the highest quality leads, because they just watched something, how to do it with your product. They might be ready to want to try your product. So if a sales team reaches out there, they might just get a demo call within the next few days, because these people literally just were in your webinar and now they want to know how your solution works for their specific problem case, right? And this is really powerful. And this is just, we're talking about, sending newsletters here, basically, or email blasts. I'm not talking here yet about the paid ads that we have around these ebooks that we're publishing. And so how would this look like? So earlier I talked about these waves, and this like week 1 we do something, and week 2 we do something, and reference back from week one, right? So here you can see this played out extremely beautifully, because we send our newsletters on Tuesdays and Thursdays. We see here February 1st was a Thursday, so we have a newsletter set up. And exactly on that day, we decided to also publish an ebook. So in this Thursday newsletter, the green box here, we promoted ebook number 1, the high level one. And then on the Tuesday, the 6th, we sent a newsletter with just one link to an interesting blog post, because as mentioned, we publish 4 blog posts per week. So what did we deem the most interesting one? We sent it out. that's it, just a link to a blog post, because on the first, we're sending people to something with a form. So that introduces friction, right? So because we asked them to do something for us on the first, now we're just really value forward on the sixth. Here's a really interesting article that we think you might be interested in, right? Not gated, nothing, no forms, just one quick link. This might be interesting to you. And then on the 8th, the next Thursday, we do the same thing. So really, again, low friction, just a link to an interesting article, but we have a PS at the bottom. Hey, PS, last week we published an ebook you might be interested in, and that links again to that landing page. And then you can see already on the 13th, well, ebook number 2 is coming on up, more middle of the funnel. We have a newsletter that promotes that. So only purpose of this newsletter is the link to the landing page. Here's a new ebook for you, right? And then again, Thursday, you can see hands off, no friction, just an interesting article. And now you say, well, if they were allowed to publish 2 newsletters per week, I mean, how can I replicate that? Again, your situation might be different. We earned that over time, right? We didn't start with that. Like, I remember when I sent the newsletter every quarter, right? And then I turned to every month, and then it was once a week, and then it was twice a week, right? And so you might also not be at the point where you have 2 ebooks and 1 webinar per month, right? So maybe you send 2 newsletters per month, or maybe you send 1 email blast and the ebook comes out, and then you have 1 monthly newsletter, and then that one you also mention that you published an ebook last or this month, right? Something like that. So applied to your situation. But I want to show you how these emails look like. So we had a developer audience. So I did a lot of experiments. Again, if you can send to 120,000 people, the data you get out of that is actually quite meaningful and helpful. And so I ran a lot of experiments. As mentioned, like I ran like a newsletter with a designed layout. I ran newsletters where at the end of the month, they would, in one long newsletter, get everything, like all 16 blog posts of the month, all ebooks, the webinar, all of that stuff. I also had one on the weekly one where I had just the links to the 4 articles of this week. And turns out you would think like that works better. But if we only had 1 link to 1 article that we decided probably is the most interesting one of the week, that got more clicks than the newsletter version where we had 4 links to 4 different interesting articles that included the one that I just said was probably the best. And it got fewer clicks. So again, like we experimented a lot. This worked well with our audience, but I would assume it probably, it works well with, if you are communicating to a technical audience, I would say this probably is at least not a bad way to do it. And then just quickly for webinars, I showed you the content calendar earlier. We did something similar. It was just like 1 week before the webinar, we sent out a main promotion, and then we sent out another last seats kind of webinar. And our webinar program was really successful. I mean, we had sessions where we had over 1,000 attendees in our webinar. And, the average was like, I think I mentioned it earlier somewhere, the average was like around 250 attendees in our webinars. We had some where we had 700 in there, some where we had over 1,000. But I would say like over the years, the average was around 250 attendees in our sessions, which is great. And again, it's because we built a newsletter base that was really engaged and produced content that was interesting to them. So now let's get to these external newsletter sponsorships, right? This is, I would say, like, if you're thinking about budget, you have a marketing budget for distribution and promotion, I would say retargeting ads and these like external tech newsletter sponsorships are probably best bang for your buck. And they were a big part for us because, right, we had a bottoms up sales motion. So we wanted to reach software developers, and where do they get their information from? They got it from our blog, thankfully, but also from tech newsletters, right? So if you sponsor an interesting ebook in this tech newsletters, that can work really well. And why I like this especially is, let's compare it to podcast sponsorships, for example. And I'm going to talk about this in a second, but attribution is just so much simpler for tech newsletters, right? The sponsorship partner will give you a price for your sponsorship. If it's choose a newsletter, you usually get reports of how many click-throughs you got. The click-throughs, if you promote an ebook to your landing page, right, are you get clicks to your landing page and then you get downloads. But even if it's just to a blog post, you can still measure cost per unique reader that came to you, basically. But if it's to an ebook that somebody downloads, and if you do your attribution and your tracking links well, on the form, you capture the tracking link and then you see, okay, this many downloads came from this sponsorship. You also know how much you paid for this sponsorship. This number divided by this number is your cost per lead. And then you can compare it to other activities, like, I don't know, retargeting ads, Twitter ads, LinkedIn ads, whatever, right? And so these sponsorship had such good lead quality and cost per lead for us. And that's the thing, right? Because for us, really good leads were software developers. And then, we had some account-based marketing, multiple developers from the same company came inbound. One came via an ebook, another one came via a webinar. And, that's send signals to our sales team, basically. But yeah, as mentioned, I'm digressing a bit. These are a great channel. And you really want to build relationship with the curators. And a good way to do this is to sponsor these newsletters, right? Because that will accelerate your relationship building, but also really, send them your own content from time to time because, I don't know, you've got the Cooper Press newsletters by Peter Cooper, for example, Go Weekly, Ruby Weekly, Postgres Weekly, JavaScript Weekly, right? If you have a good article, I don't know, a good article about Ruby on Rails on your blog, maybe it's written by Draft.dev, if you think it's a really good fit for the Ruby Weekly newsletter, just reach out to the Ruby Weekly newsletter and ask them if they would consider, featuring it or putting it into the next upcoming newsletter. Because, right, for them it's important to have good content to grow their audience. And if it's genuinely good content, of course they will feature it, right? So, do that every now and then. Don't do it with everything. I mean, if I publish 4 blog posts per week and I send all 4 blog posts to 10 different newsletter curators, that's spam. That's not good for relationship building, right? But if you do it every now and then with a really good piece, that can work well for you. And then, give them feedback, be helpful to them, and every now and then ask for feedback, but don't do it too much because, right, they've got their own business, they've got their own stuff going on. But, just like with what you do with a really helpful, genuine relationship, give them feedback, get some feedback. And so going back to our content calendar here, I'm zooming in a little bit. Here in purple, you can see the pre-booked newsletter sponsorships. So you can see, for example, on the 1st, we published an ebook, and then we had the internal newsletter going out. But then on the 7th and 8th, we had external newsletter sponsorships. And on the 15th and 16th, we also had external newsletter sponsorships. And you can even see right here, I have RevOps Weekly was $100 back then, and Node Weekly, you can see it's cut off, and Serverless was $80. Right? I'm sure by now they grew their audience, so now they're more expensive, right? Which is fair game because we can get more exposure, so we should pay more for that. But the nice thing is, on the 7th and 8th, those are ready-made sponsorship slots for the ebook that I'm publishing on the 1st. And then on the 15th and 16th, you might remember on the 13th, we had ebook number 2. So it all depends. I can either promote ebook number 2 on the 15th and 16th, or if that's not a good fit for the audience, like let's say, I don't know, the ebook, the tech stack in the ebook is Ruby on Rails, the 15th is a Go newsletter, probably not gonna promote a Ruby ebook in the Go newsletter, so I'll just promote ebook number 1. It's more top of the funnel, more high level, but it might bring in new leads, right? So that is the beauty of this. It's so simple. It's a calendar. I put in a few different categories, but I already so actively can manage and orchestrate what is happening. People sometimes kind of smirk content calendars, but it is that simple, but it is also that powerful, right? And again, we're not talking about podcast sponsorship here yet. It's all we're only seeing what we're doing in some external newsletter sponsorships here. So yeah, also a big thing with multiplicators is to do the direct outreach to them, as mentioned, right? Be really genuine and helpful. So it's so cool that Matt Setter is in the audience today, because that's exactly what I did with him. I saw him being featured a bunch in some of these tech newsletters. And so I just wanted to build a relationship with him. And, we had a few calls like years ago. And today he's here listening to his webinar. It's a really nice moment for me. But yeah, as mentioned, every now and then also reach out to curators if you think you really have a good piece for them that works well for their audience, because that's what they are looking for, right? They just want to provide really good content in their newsletters to their audience because that's what their job is. And so if we can help them and make their life easier, great. It's a win-win. And then just like newsletter sponsorships, you can also do podcast sponsorship. They can be pre-booked and you can orchestrate them quite well. But I would treat them very differently because, again, attribution is so hard and the intent gap is quite wide. So I would mainly use these podcast sponsorships to really drill down into your brand message. So like, for example, at Codeship, we had this sponsorships and it was like, Codeship continuous integration and delivering the cloud. And so people like developers would just listen to these different podcasts and everywhere they would hear Codeship continuous integration and delivery in the cloud. And so whenever that came up in their work, hopefully they will remember Codeship continuous integration and delivery in the cloud. Right? It's very similar to, in my previous webinar, I talked about retargeting ads. They're great because, impressions cost you nothing, only clicks cost you. So if you get spiky content, spiky traffic to your blog, and again, if you now don't know what spiky traffic is, watch my previous webinars, please. You capture this audience and then for free, basically, for a long time, they can see your logo with your tagline, Codeship logo, continuous integration and delivery in the cloud. It's pretty similar with these podcast sponsorship. Just push that brand message, or they push big new feature releases or big, business announcement. But I wouldn't just say, sign up today, because again, like the intent gap is so, I don't know, like how likely is it that these listeners right now are thinking about exactly your product and they have the budget and the timing is right and they go and sign up right now. But yeah, as mentioned previously, if I would have a limited budget and I have to decide, attribution is so hard with podcast sponsorships, so I would go for tech newsletter sponsorships and paid ads like retargeting ads. If you think about, how do I want to deploy my budget? And here you can see in the content calendar. So, for example, every week we had a different podcast sponsorship. And so, if you can see this now, it was on Mondays. Every Monday we had different podcast sponsorships. And here in the content calendar, I can see that this is happening. Right? It all is in one really nice view. Ebook publishing, internal newsletters, external promotions, podcast promotions. This screenshot doesn't even show you all of the social media stuff we did right around. 4 blog posts per week. Every blog post obviously had multiple social media posts. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. And this is not even here because it just gets too convoluted, right? The important thing here is that we have really nice visibility and can make decisions very quickly and easily. And it's plain to see how we should move things around. So yeah, really important here. Just like when I talked in my previous webinars about building a content engine and making this repeatable and, visibility and pre-planning and orchestrating, the same thing can be done with paid ads, right? Just like content can be turned into an engine, so can your paid ads activities. You want to build these repeatable loops where you rotate assets in and out and it's predictable and you can forecast what's going to happen and you can estimate the cost per lead from this channel versus another channel, etc. Right? This is all doable. So I'm just going to quickly walk through what we did. And again, I forgot to mention, Codeship was a VC-backed company. So yes, I did have some marketing budget, but it wasn't crazy. But on Twitter ads, we had a monthly rotation of assets. You might remember we published 2 ebooks per month. So we had 2 to 3 different assets per month on Twitter ads. And what we did basically was every month, 2 assets would rotate out and the winner of the previous month would stay in, right? And then next month, the same thing. And if still from month 1, it's still one of the best performers, it stays in until it starts, dying down a little bit. And then we just rotate a new one in, right? And so the nice thing is if you think about retargeting ads, I think the maximum window on Google retargeting ads is 540 days, like 1.5 years. Who wants to see the same ad for 1.5 years, right? So if you keep it fresh and every 30 days, there's 2-3 different assets that are actually helpful because, right, again, when I talk about retargeting ads, I did it in my previous webinars, we can create this retargeting audience. So we only capture people that went to blog posts that have the word Ruby in the URL. So now we know this audience only gets ebooks with the Ruby content, right? And then we have a different audience for Python. So then within the Ruby audience, if you keep it fresh and you don't have just one ebook for 1.5 years, but actually you have different ebooks that are relevant to that audience and they're rotating in and out and in and out, that keeps stuff fresh. And that's how you keep on getting people to landing pages with forms. And if you do progressive profiling, the form questions get switched out every time we learn something new from these people, right? So that's a feature, for example, HubSpot has, but you can even do it manually if you want, right? I don't know, every 2 months, switch out the questions on your gated asset forms, right? And so over time, right, the marketing engine, the content engine produces the blog post generates the newsletter subscribers, the marketing engine, the content engine also produces the ebooks. The ebooks get promoted in the newsletter that sends people to landing pages where they fill out the forms with the sales qualification, but also the ads and the retargeting ads send people to the landing pages. The tech newsletter sponsorships send people to the landing pages. And the more assets a lead downloads, the more we learn from them, and the more likely it is that it's a good sales lead that the sales team can actually convert, right? Because this is really important, right? We only want to send good leads to sales. What is a good lead? Like, I don't know, if we asked how many engineers work in your company on the form of an ebook, and the response is 1, well, a sales rep should never see this person because a sales rep is a human that gets a salary, and it's highly unlikely that the deal size in terms of revenue from a company that has 1 engineer will bring in enough money to make it worth having a human work that lead. So that should be a marketing lead that gets nurtured over time, and maybe in a year's time, that company now has 20 engineers, and then suddenly they become a good fit for us to have a conversation with them, right? So anyways, I'm digressing a little bit, but yeah, you can see Twitter ads, 2 to 3 ads per month. Same thing for Facebook. Like, again, we ran this like almost 10 years ago. So Facebook is not what it used to be, but also even back then, I was like flabbergasted. We sometimes, there was a short time frame where we got a cost per lead of less than $1 from Facebook ads. Don't ask me how. I don't know why. It didn't last long, but it's insane, right? Nowadays, I'm pretty sure this is not a super great channel for a tech audience anymore. But hey, give it a try. Run some experiments, right? You can see we also ran Google retargeting ads. Nowadays, I would probably replace the Facebook retargeting ads with LinkedIn retargeting ads, and then just general LinkedIn ads, not just retargeting. And with Google retargeting ads, again, we have 3 assets per quarter, rotate the assets in and out. And you can see in all of these examples, I have exclude audiences. So if somebody already has a product sign up, or if somebody has like has visited a thank you page, it means they already downloaded the specific ebook, then why should they see the ad again, right? We don't want to spam people. If they did the activity that we want them to do, they should not see the ads anymore, because why should they, right? And so we had this set up for each ad channel. And then almost wrapping up here, but I also wanna talk about social media. And again, this is how we did it back then. Facebook nowadays does not have, in my view, that high priority anymore. But it's really important to each social media channel got a different treatment, right? So on Twitter, we were kind of the news outlet, high quantity. We promoted our content, but also content from other outlets. It's like really easy. If you follow these tech newsletters, there is some really good content there. So, you can just promote some of the good content from these tech newsletters, even if it's not your own content, right? And here I would really say we kind of stretched it in terms of frequency. We tried, we experimented up to a point where, Twitter analytics told us, okay, we're getting more unfollows, or people sometimes, like, a few people say, hey, man, you're doing too much. Okay, then, yeah, we move it down. But we let the market tell us, right? We can test. And if it's too much, we respect that. And then we dial down again, right? But yeah, we were a news outlet on Twitter, basically, right? Publishing really interesting content, not just our own, right? On Facebook, it was much more about the people behind the company. So we would promote probably a lot of the same things, but the tonality was just different, right? So it's like not, hey, we have a webinar coming up next week. Is like our software engineer that recently worked on this thing with an image of their face, right, is hosting a webinar next week, right? It's highlight the human, right? We also did like new employees and employee spotlights and stuff like that. Just a different tonality, but we promoted a lot of the same stuff, but the frequency was lower than Twitter. And then this is what I probably nowadays would do with LinkedIn. But back then on LinkedIn, we just were like total B2B, new fundraising, big announcements, press releases, stuff like that. So here you can quickly see, and I'm actually considering the next few slides. I'm considering just creating a small PDF and sending this to people, and then making it available in our resources page. I've been asked quite a bit about this. Well, now I'm talking about a bunch about ebooks, but if you have a content engine running and you're doing what I talked about in webinar 1 and 2, you create mainly blog posts for now. How do you promote these blog posts, right? And it's really, this is how we did it. Again, you might do it differently, and your audience might tell you, what is too much. This was the sweet spot for us on Twitter. Again, we did high frequency there, and we do, publish 4 blog posts per week on the day of the publishing. We send 1 tweet out in the morning and 1 at the end of the day, right? And then you can see the cadence of how we do this, right? And obviously, we didn't do the same message. There was some with image, some others, different typos, different messages, this kind of stuff, right? There's a really good like SaaS tool, like a social media scheduler that I usually recommend. Robin can link to that. It's called meetedgar.com, and it allows you for different social media channels to set up content categories, and then in a content calendar, basically defines slots per day and time per day on which social media channel, which type of promotion category goes out. So you could create a category that is ebooks, and then you could create a category that is blog posts, and then you say, okay, I have 3 promotion slots on this day, and 2 of them are blog posts and 1 is an ebook, for example, right? Check it out. I really like it. And then on Facebook, yeah, you can. I'll just create this PDF, I think, and we'll send it to you. But you can see here how we did it for an ebook on the day it got published. We send a Facebook post, and then 3 weeks later we send another one. For webinars, we did a specific thing, right? The important thing here is experiment, try things, and see what sticks. And at the beginning, err on the side of doing too much, and then the audience tells you this is too much. Reel it in again. And again, on LinkedIn, we just really talked about, very high level business stuff. I don't think we did a great job with LinkedIn at Codeship, but also LinkedIn has changed a lot over the last few years, and now I would focus much, much more on it over Facebook, for example. And then last but not least, let's quickly talk about like these aggregator pages like Reddit and Hacker News, and then about Slack communities, and then I'll wrap it up for the Q&A. But yeah, Hacker News, that kind of stuff is, it creates traffic spikes, so don't expect great conversions. And if you don't know what I mean with traffic spikes, again, watch my previous webinars where I talk about different types of content. And there's evergreen content, and then there's spiky traffic content, and we can engineer for that. But if you have good content pieces, submit them to Hacker News and Reddit. But also be informed about the etiquette there. So if you have an ebook landing page and it's gated and there's a form, don't submit it to Hacker News. That's a really big no-no. And people will not appreciate that. And again, brand reputation is so important, and that really is detrimental, right? So again, do the right thing for the specific channel. But definitely, if you have, good articles that are helpful for an audience, go to the different subreddits and submit it there. And last but not least, Slack communities. I'm telling you, it takes a lot of consistent involvement. It's a lot of work. So, if you have a dev rel in your company, for sure, they can work that and really be, it's again, you have to provide a lot of value. You cannot very actively promote your own stuff. It's more like asking for feedback. If you have a blog post, you can ask people, hey, do you think this is a good blog post before I publish this and stuff like that? but it's really hard to consistently promote yourself in this. But for really important stuff, it can work. But if you're asking me hey, Manny, what should I spend my time on most? This is pretty far down the list because it's high effort in terms of marketing, just like lead generation. The probability of getting a lot of good leads out of this is low. Okay, final thoughts. Again, be smart about this. Have lists, bookmarks, folders available. I don't know, like if you have your subreddits, you publish a new blog post in Ruby, you just right click in your bookmark bar, say open all tabs. It opens all of these things. You push a thing once at the time of publishing, and then the rest goes into Edgar, for example, for the social media and all of this stuff, right? Use automation, like nowadays, if you want AI for different versions of promotion posts, use it. Really, again, we did all of this with a very small team. Nowadays, it's really even easier to do this, right? And so, just be smart, set up things. And the last thing I just want to say is, you might ask me, what is too much posting? And I just want to reiterate again, people will tell you. But when they tell you, listen and act on the feedback. Don't ignore them. And with that, listen and act. Let's jump into the Q&A. Quickly before I do that, I can tell you that we have next Wednesday, we have a fireside chat coming up. Draft.dev co-owner Carl Hughes is talking about how to stand out in a competitive tech landscape, and we invited guests from SUSE and Console Connect, so that's going to be really cool. I think Robin might send a link to the registration page in the chat, but if not, you can check out Draft.dev/webinars and sign up for it if you want. And yeah, I mean, right, if you're interested in tech content production, we are here for you. I don't want to be too salesy here, but obviously you can see on the screen what we do. We have over 300 writers. They're all practicing professionals with, on average, 10 years of experience. And I think that's what really sets us apart from other content agencies. Like, we can just really write very deep technical content. So yeah, if you're working on building a content engine, but your internal subject matter experts don't have the time or working on product development, always reach out to us. You can book a call on Draft.dev/call or let us know in the post-webinar survey, and we're happy to help. But with that, let's have a look at the Q&A. Yeah, so feel free to post some more questions, but for now, I'm gonna walk through a question by Charles. Charles is asking, what about content syndication? And so that is a good question. Personally, I'm a proponent of owning the content that you publish on your domain. And so in previous webinars, I talked about keyword research and content clusters and also semantic clustering. But in short, the more content you have about the same topic on your domain, the more helpful these multiple content pieces are for search engine crawls and also for generative engines, so ChatGPT and all of the stuff, when they crawl the stuff. If they understand better what the domain is about, that helps you rank better and get in front of people better. So you might strategically want to, publish some content on Dev.to or DZone or Hashnote, Medium, HackerNoon. There's a lot of these places for content syndication, right? Personally, I'm always a big fan of just, publishing on your own domain and benefiting from that for search engine traffic. Or now, again, right, many people might be scared with, search engine traffic, isn't 75% of top funnel traffic lost now to Google AI overviews? Yes, but there's still a bunch. I mean, we're seeing in our own data, we're growing our traffic right now at Draft.dev, for example, right? And we're following our own best practices, and we're growing organic traffic at Draft.dev. And so if you're smart about it and you follow the principles from my 2 previous webinars about how to build a content engine in the age of AI, then that can work for you. And so, if you have a lot of blog posts around the same topics, you might say, well, I have 3 blog posts about the same topic. Why not publish one to Dev.2? Sure. Personally, I would still publish all 3 on our own blog, if they're not the exact same, obviously. But if you want to do it, I would just really think about content and audience fit. So Dev.2, for example, lots of practicing professionals, lots of actual developers on there. So I don't know, if you have something about industry, like high level kind of stuff that usually appeals to decision maker, don't waste that ammunition and don't publish that on Dev.2, right? Really think about what you publish where on which channel. So long story short, personally, I would publish all of this stuff on our own blog, but there are some cases where it might make sense to, one time get a burst of impressions by using an external outlet for that. Okay, there's one other question here from Michael. How would I, let me paraphrase this, how would I split the budget for different channels to promote, basically, and distribute? Yeah, so as mentioned a little bit earlier, if I would have to really choose, and if I would be low on budget, I'd probably go with building a content engine that drives traffic to your blog and then having retargeting ads on Google retargeting and nowadays on LinkedIn retargeting. Because, again, impressions for retargeting ads are for free. And so you can get all of these impressions and brand, awareness for $0. And if somebody clicks, that's already a good sign, because if they click, for example, to an ebook landing page, well, they're just one form submission away from actually being a lead in your database. But you can build a relationship with this lead, right? So you can start doing retargeting ads with a very small, like $150 per month. That's good enough really to get going, right? So even if you have a very small budget, I think this is something you should do. And then if you promote to a technical audience and you promote to software developers, I would go for the tech and newsletter sponsorships. They can be quite pricey if they reach a lot of people, right? But you can so clearly see a cost per lead, and the audience is pretty much ready-made and a good fit for you. This is like, again, it's like, if you are in the Kubernetes newsletter and you are a product in the Kubernetes space, and somebody downloads an ebook where you talk about Kubernetes, probably this person is a good fit to give your product a try, right? They might not be ready for it, but they are a good fit, right? And so this is what I would do next. Yeah. And then again, this can be done for, $1,000-$2,000 a quarter. You can get some cheaper developer newsletter sponsorships. Cool. I didn't see any more questions come in, so I'm gonna wrap it up here for now. Of course, if you have other questions, you can always reach out to me at Manuel@Draft.dev, or you can respond to Robin's follow-up email tomorrow with the recording and all of the material, Robin@Draft.dev, or just let us know in the post-webinar survey. As mentioned, if you let us know, I want a content calendar templates, just let us know in there, and we'll make sure to send them to you. For now, have a nice day, and bye-bye.